Say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave.
All right, so I have to stand behind. Thank you, Craig. So how many of you recognize the voice that just sang the national anthem? So Craig has, that was Lauren Hart, who is also an alumni of Thomas Edison State University, and she sings the national anthem before every Flyers game. So again, another life that you changed. So without any further ado, I would like to get our program started, and I'm going to start with a little insight into my boss and the president of the university that you may or may not know, that Dr. Hancock is no stranger to the military and veterans community. She has dedicated her career to serving underrepresented populations, including veterans and military members. She previously served on the board of the Service Members Opportunity Colleges. She is the past president of the National Association of Institutions of Military and Educational Services. She served on the Council of College and Military Educators. She served as a military spouse. And she began her educational career teaching military and veteran students at Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University and the University of Maryland University College. One of our biggest supporters. Please welcome Dr. Meredith Hancock.
Thank you, Dennis. I know you spoke about family, so I'm the granddaughter of a vet. I'm the daughter of a vet. I'm the mother of a vet. I'm the sister of a vet. I'm the cousin of a vet. I'm the aunt of a vet, and I actually could use vets plural in a lot of those. So I come from a family that really, really believes in service. And I have to say, I have 2 days that are like, in some ways, people don't think this when you think favorite holidays, but Veterans Day and Labor Day for me are two of my favorite holidays because this is the backbone of our country. These 2 days reflect so much of what we all take just for granted in how we live, what we do. And I know we have Memorial Day sitting on that, and I have to say I've been a good friend to several people who gave the full measure. And when I've spoken to people who are vets, and people always talk about, if you watch social media around Memorial Day and Veterans Day, you always get those people saying, keep them straight, keep them straight. But what I've found is when I speak to vets, they say, they're really kind of combined. They're really, a vet is always walking with that side of Memorial Day with them. And, the people who have given the full measure always the vets they know are walking on for them. So it's an interesting piece when I look at these days, and I'm glad we've started the trend of celebrating a little bit on Veterans Day. And I do want to say that I think, this is staff, so you know it, but we looked a while ago at our holidays. And one of the ideas is, are we open or are we closed on Veterans Day? And it was really impressive to me that a lot of folks came and said, I know that it feels like we ought to be closed to honor it, but it feels like we ought to be open to be there for our vets. And that was an interesting take. I thought, this is an institution that gets it. They grab it, they get it, they love it. Dennis said when I started teaching, I was and some of you may have heard the story, so I'm sorry about it, but I was very traditionally educated. I went to school really young, graduated really young, and Embry-Riddle asked me to teach courses. So I went out to teach courses on Oceana Naval Air Station, and I went into a class where I was the youngest person there. I had my hair in a bun and everything and tried to look really old. And I will say, for those of you who've been on military bases, they're not the most updated things. I was teaching an old hangar, and they had a TV hanging down. That was the old days when they had the TVs. And they had the cord, and every time I would walk by this, being my height, it would grab my hair in the bun and rip it out. And I was determined not to flinch because I was trying to act professional. And at the end of the course, I realized there was like all this blonde hair hanging off this thing. So I thought everybody knew it was ripping the hair out of my head every time I walked by. But I left that course so energized. I thought, this is the way it is. These are students who know so much, care so much. And it was really military and their families. And the idea that they brought world experience. If you've done, how many of us did their undergraduate in a traditional 18-year-old way? Okay, so that's great. Because when you're 18, nothing gets in the way. It's all theory. Real life doesn't mess with it at all. Your faculty love it because you really don't talk back a lot because you don't have a lot of things to really push back on. So I went out to teach economics, and I had people who lived in the world, and they were pushing back on theory. And it was just so energizing to serve this group of people who I thought, they have jobs that are 150%, and they're finding a way to be here to get their degree, to further themselves. And it was just such a great feeling. So with that, I won't take any more time, but that was a trajectory. Suddenly I called my parents and said, you know what, I don't think I'm doing finance, I think I'm doing this. And they're like, what is this? And I said, I'm not really sure yet, but this is what I'm definitely doing. And that kind of took the whole piece off. And so while I've never served, and I think being a family member, you do serve, but there's different views of it. So I've never served in the uniform. I'm awfully glad to be a part of an institution that serves so much. So at that, I will turn it over to Craig. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Dr. Hancock. Before we get started with the panel, I just wanted to recognize any veterans that we have here with us today. If you could please stand. Any veterans? All right, thank you so much for your service. Well, thank you for joining us today for the Reflections of Service discussion panel. And I wanted to share a few words about our moderator today, Maja Mendez. Maja served on active duty in the U.S. Army from 2004 to 2007. Her MOS was 92Y, which is Unit Supply Specialist, and she served as her commander's .50 caliber gunner. She was stationed at Fort Hood, Texas, Fort Irwin, California, and deployed to Iraq in 2005. Maja was also an Army spouse, and her husband also served on active duty in the Army. Following her time in the Army, Maja worked on the Fort Irwin base after transitioning out of the Army. In 2009, she and her husband moved to Fort Lee, Virginia. Shortly after, she moved to New Jersey to pursue her college degree at Berkeley College. And at Berkeley, she completed her bachelor's degree in 3 years. And during that time, she worked as a VA work-study student. She transitioned into a full-time role as the coordinator of the Office of Military and Veteran Affairs, and was promoted to assistant director in 2017. While at Berkeley College, she provided guidance to military and veteran students pertaining to their academics and was the sole school certifying official for the veteran student population. Maja is originally from San Jose, California, and she's a diehard 49ers fan. Ooh, She's lived in New Jersey for 12 years, but she does not enjoy the cold weather here on the East Coast. Maja received her bachelor's degree in health management from Berkeley College and a Master of Science in Higher Education from Walden University. She also completed 2 graduate certificate programs in higher education leadership for student success and enrollment management and for institutional marketing. She currently serves on the executive board for the New Jersey Association of Veteran Program Administrators, and she started her journey with them as secretary in 2014, transitioning into the VP role in 2021. Maja started at Thomas Edison State University as a full-time temp employee in the Office of Military and Veteran Education in January of 2020. She accepted a full-time position in April 2021, and in April of 2023, she was promoted to Associate Director of Military and Veteran Recruitment and Outreach. Please join me with a warm welcome for Maja Mendez.
No, I'm going to introduce them individually. Yep. Hello, everyone. Thank you for listening to the long bio that Craig gave about me. So I just want to thank you all for joining us for the Reflections of Service here. And before we get started, I wanted to bring your attention to the room of the reference of our table of honor at the front. If you're unaware of what the table of honor is about or what it's for, this table is reserved to honor our brave and selfless American military members who have perished on the battlefield, those who have not been returned to us after being taken prisoner on foreign soil, and for those who have gone missing, and for those who have not found their way back. It symbolizes that they are still here with us, always in spirit. So I'm going to introduce our panelists and have them come up individually, and then they're going to be able to further discuss who they are and further go into depth. So I'll introduce Craig Smith. He is the Director of Military and Veteran Enrollment and Outreach. You guys had the pleasure of meeting him already. And then I'm going to introduce Major Goodwin. If you could come up and join us. And then our last individual is Terrence Carter. As you all know, he works for Thomas Edison State University as well. So I'm going to not pass the mic because everybody has their own mic, but I'm going to allow the panelists to introduce themselves, talk about their branch of service, times of service, and how they're affiliated with Thomas Edison. So you all don't have to go at once, but go ahead and start.
Hi, my name is Terrence Carter. I served in the U.S. Army during Desert Storm. My MOS was 13 Bravo, which is artillery. As soon as I came out, I did some time at Mercer County Community College. I transferred to HBCU in South Carolina, Allen University, where I graduated my bachelor's degree. And I'm currently employed here at Thomas Edison State University.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone. My name is Chaplain Major Althea Devon Goodwin. I am a graduate, of course, of Thomas Edison. I currently serve as the Brigade Command Chaplain with the 333 MPs located in Farmingdale, New York. I'm a retired Philadelphia police officer, and I hold a PhD also from Walden. We have a number of things in common. Right. In public policy administration, I'm a subject matter expert in terrorism, mediation, and peace. And my dissertation was written on restorative justice and recidivism, nonviolent offenders from an East Coast perspective. And I also built tiny houses for homeless veterans.
Well, good afternoon. I'm Craig Smith, and I served 22 years in the Air Force. Enlisted, retired as an E8. I spent half of my time in education. I spent half of my time as a maintainer, and I taught tech training for a few years. I taught professional military education. I was like the principal of an Airman Leadership School. I was a commandant of the Airman Leadership School. Finished up my time in the military over in Germany. I started in Germany, in Wiesbaden, Germany, back in 1991. And then in 2012, I finished up back in Germany at Ramstein, and I oversaw the enlisted PME programs for USAFE over there. So got out of the Air Force. I taught high school at Vineland High School, Air Force Junior ROTC, did that for a year and a half, and then came over here to Thomas Edison in the Office of Military and Veteran Education in 2013. So thank you.
Alrighty, so we're going to get the questions going, and we're going to kind of go from enlistment to the transition to their education, and you guys have kind of already heard how they're affiliated with Thomas Edison, but maybe you don't know that every veteran's experience is different. My experience would be different from Craig's. We were in different branches. Sometimes it can be different a little bit from being male versus female, but it's interesting and very encouraging to hear what everybody has to speak about and what they have to say. So my first question is, what were some of the reasons that you joined the military, and how did you choose your branch of service?
Okay, I'll start. Thank you for asking. And it's so wonderful to be here, too. Thank you, everyone. What were some of the reasons? Well, actually, I went through a divorce. And I hope no one takes this the wrong way, but I thought to myself, oh, my goodness, what an opportunity. You know? Sorry. You know, and I always wanted to join the military. I come from a military family. And on September 10th, I made an appointment to meet with a recruiter for the following day. And, of course, we all know what the following day was. And I'll never forget, he called me that morning. He said, do you still want to keep this appointment? And I said, yes, of course. And I signed my initial enlistment contract on 2/15 on 9/11. And that's the beginning of how I joined. And you had a second part to the question.
How did you choose your branch of service?
Yeah, that was how, because my oldest brother is a Desert Storm veteran. I have an uncle who is a master jumper and Vietnam era veteran, and an uncle that served in Korea, and another uncle who served in the Second War, and it just goes back to the 54th Regiment of the Civil War. However, we didn't have a tradition of women, but the tradition was still there in the family. So I always heard about, the Army, and it's such a good thing. And so I said, well, okay, I'll give it a chance and see what happens. And I did. Thank you.
Well, my dad, he's a retired sergeant major in the U.S. Army. And so it was like, he was like, what are you going to do after high school? Like, I was like, I don't know, Dad. What do you think I should do? So he was like, well, you know what I want you to do. I said, okay. I said, I'll think about it. He said, what do you say? I said, I'm sorry, sir. I said, I'll definitely go to the recruitment office, as soon as I can. So, I was kind of, dragging my feet, and he kept, when are you going? I'm like, I'm going, Dad. And he's like, and so I went on. I think it was a Wednesday. I went to the recruitment office, and I signed my life away. What they say back then, it was like, you signed your life away, and I think about 2 days later, Iraq invaded Kuwait, and it was like, so he was like, oh yeah, son, you picked a good time to go. I was like, my mother was terrified. My dad, he was licking his chops. Yeah, son. I was like, yes. He was like your old man. So that's how I chose my branch of service. and the rest is history.
Man, my story's nowhere not that funny. Thank you, Terrence. Appreciate that. So my family, not a lot of military background in my family. My brother didn't make it through basic training in the Air Force. He came back to work on the family farm. My brother-in-law did serve 4 years in the Air Force, but I graduated high school and didn't have money to go to college. And I worked for my brother's construction company for 3 years in upstate New York, outside. And so I did a couple of winters, and I said, I don't think this is for me. So I just said, maybe the military would be a good thing to do. And I thought the Air Force would be a great opportunity. I thought I'd learn some new skills, learn a trade, get some experience, and then I'll also have some money to be able to go to school. So.
I think we all have similar stories in that aspect of why we joined or the branch, why we chose, whether it was family or, friends or not wanting to be out in the cold in upstate New York. And so how did you imagine that your military life would be before you joined?
I really had no idea. Again, not a big military family background. So, I'd heard a little bit about basic training and things like that, but I didn't really know what to expect. I was married, and I had my son was like 18 months old when I actually enlisted. And so going through basic training, he actually had to go in the hospital while I was there. But the drill instructor was kind of cool. He let me call home, just to check on my son. But no, I found that there was opportunities. There were challenges, and it definitely wasn't easy at times. But I found that there were opportunities, and I found that if you take a step at some of those opportunities, it might open up some other doors. But I had no idea what it was going to be like. But
my dad, he pretty much told me what to expect, especially at the time, during wartime, and I didn't think he was really serious. All the stuff that he told me, I just thought he was really over exaggerating a lot of things. But when I got to basic training, it was a lot more. It was more intense, I think, more than what he told me it was going to be. He was in during the Korean War and and Vietnam, and I don't know exactly how basic training was back then for him, but when I was in, it was very intense. It was scary at times. I'm not going to lie. It was an experience.
I can agree with that. It definitely was an experience, and I didn't know what would happen. I had no idea. I figured I would go, and if I make it through, then wonderful, and I'll see what happens after that. So I went to basic training in Fort Jackson, South Carolina. Cool. Yeah, hood. And I turned 30 in basic training. Yeah, it was so interesting because I was the oldest woman in my platoon, and they kept putting me in these positions, assistant, squad leader, assistant platoon leader, the whole nine. And so finally, when I graduated from basic training and then went to AIT at Fort Lee, Virginia, and we had our very last PT test. That's, when we did the PT test, and we had the 2-miler. And all of my battle buddies, they're like, oh, yeah, we're going to finish strong. We're going to run together, And I said, no, I don't think that's a good idea. and they used to call me Twist. Yeah, and they said, Twist, well, why not? I said, because you have no idea how old I am. Yeah, if we finish strong, like, I'm going to do really well, but you're not. You're just not, because you're 18 and I'm 30. Yeah, and they're like, what? They said, Twist, you're 30? I said, yeah, so please don't run with me. Don't. I appreciate it, but don't run with me. So I ended up with the 2-miler. I think I finished at, it was like 16:28.
Wow.
Yeah, that's a good time if you're 30. Right. Thank you. Yeah, so it was something. It was a journey, really. I didn't know what was going to happen, what to expect. My MOS at the time was 92 Alpha, which because you're a Yankee. Yep, Yankee. And it was almost like the UN in some regards, because you're meeting so many different people from so many different walks, and you have one thing in common, and you want to get through this, you want to graduate, you want to finish strong, you want to make your family proud, and you want to be a good soldier. So it was something I will never, ever forget and always value, always.
So, Chaplain Goodwin, you told us a quick, funny moment from boot camp about not being possibly able to keep up with them. Do you guys have any other funny moments from boot camp or from even AIT or tech school that you'd like to share?
Oh, my goodness.
I have a whole bunch, too. I think people would probably look at me differently if I told some of them.
Well, so one of my drill sergeants, he looked similar to my father. So, and I told my dad, I said, Dad, I think you have a long lost brother, out here in Fort Sill, Oklahoma. He was like, well, don't say that to your drill sergeant. So I just couldn't help myself. So I said, his name is Drill Sergeant Hedden. I said, Drill Sergeant Hedden. I said, you and my dad, you guys kind of look alike. And he looked and he backed up and he kicked me in my chest. And he literally kicked me in my chest. And he said, boy, don't you ever say nothing like that to me. I don't have no brothers. Are you crazy? And he said, so he helped me up. So he helped me. So he helped me up. He said, all right. I said, okay. He said, listen. He said, Private, don't ever say anything like that to me again. Don't say that to nobody. He said, so why don't you go back and get in line, and we're not going to speak of this no more. I said, yes, Drill Sergeant. So I called my dad. I said, yeah, Dad, I mentioned that Drill Sergeant that you kind of look alike, and he kicked me in my chest. He said, didn't I tell you not to say nothing? He said, that's what you get. He said, that's what you get. So it was kind of funny at the time, but yeah.
I have to ask, did they end up meeting at graduation?
No, they didn't. No, they did not.
Any funny stories, Craig?
I can't compare to that, no.
I have one. I just thought of one thing. We were in AIT. I was in AIT, and I was the platoon leader. And I had about 35 soldiers. And so you march everywhere. You march to breakfast, you march to lunch, you march to dinner, you march to march. It's everywhere. And so we were on our way. I formed up the platoon to march to chow, to lunch. And you're supposed to say, fall in, and everyone falls in. And I said, fall down. I said, fall down. I said, fall down on the lead platoon. And everyone just bust out laughing. It was so funny. I said, fall down. And it was highly embarrassing, but it was funny, though.
I think I might have actually thrown myself on the floor if you would have said that. And then looked around but Terrence, I had a drill sergeant like that. I had a tough time in basic training. When I was younger, I had a mouth on me, so I got smoked a lot in basic training. A lot. Don't know how I made it through, but I did, so that's what matters, right? So now, what are some of the things you remember about adapting to military life? So you guys have discussed about how you didn't know what to expect, right, when you left. What were some of those things that you remember that helped you adapt or, made you adapt or changed your vision and stuff once going in?
For me, one of my, I say, highlighting experiences or eye-opening experiences about a basic training in AIT is that in military life, even after you leave that portion of active duty, is you learn a keen understanding of order, that there is an order in everything that we do, every institution, even down to the institution of family. There's an order, and there is a hierarchy. I mean, of course, you don't think about it that way. Like when you're a child, you don't say, I'm part of the hierarchy. You don't say that, right? But for me, that was something that really engraved in me in terms of having respect for that. Like I really began to think about stuff like this. Like wow, like my dad, like he worked full-time, he worked part-time. My mom worked full-time and she worked part-time, and I never thought about stuff like that. I was just like, okay, yeah, they had a job. Like my parents have jobs. Like, yeah, so, that was my attitude. But once you go there and you're up every single day at 4:30 a.m. and you're marching this place, you're marching, you're walking, you're running, you push up, like you said, you're getting smoked, get up, get down, do this, do that, and that becomes your life. You learn how to have a respect for everything, for people who build, for people who make your food, everything, because being in that bottom of the fishbowl, it provides you with an entirely different perspective. So you become, how can I say, you become an observer. You're a participant, but you're an observer also. So for me, that was one of the primal lessons that came out of it.
I think for me, I enjoyed the organization. The military is not for everybody, but it fit me quite well. And so I enjoyed the structure. I was a maintainer, and so basically when you go to work on a piece of equipment, you have a tech order that gives you specific instructions on exactly what you need to do, what to follow, the checklist. You have your Air Force instructions from everything, tell you how to wear your uniform to everything. So basically, I was good at following instructions. But as I worked my way up, I enjoyed the opportunity then to also learn how to lead and learn how to supervise and manage and do different things like that. So I enjoyed the structure, and it was a good fit.
I think I enjoyed the process of being broken down and being built into a soldier. Having a combat MOS, you have to constantly be ready. And I think that whole process of even going through AIT, I was in the OSIP program, so I pretty much did basic and AIT in the same place. And all my drill sergeants ended up being some of my instructors in AIT, so they knew me and we knew them. And like I said, they knew who I was and what they built me up to be. And I enjoyed that part of being in the military, being a soldier. And like I said, when I think back of how I used to be, now when I think back of my 18-year-old self to the soldier that I was when I graduated from AIT, I couldn't imagine me becoming that person. And thinking back on that's what I really enjoyed. It's just the fact of that I was changed into something that I thought I could never be. Even going through the process of a lot of nights, you going through, you don't think you're gonna make it. You don't think you or some of your buddies are gonna make it, but like when you get to that point, and when you graduate, and even when you're actually that person, when you're going through your training after AIT, you're a soldier. So I love that part.
Said it well, Terrence. So many of you may not know that when you transition from the military, it's not always easy for some as it is for others. Some have a harder time transitioning out. There's homelessness. Sometimes there's food scarce. There's a lot of different negativity, but also positivity, right? So who can you say, if anyone, that either helped you during your time of transitioning out of the military into civilian world? Was there anybody specifically that gave you that guidance or provided a helping arm when you were transitioning out to show you this is the way and this is the guide to take?
I think it was a combination of people that I know who had transitioned out, but I don't think anything really prepares you. You have to go through it yourself. And even when you kind of feel you have your ducks in order, so to speak, it's still a challenge. And you have to realize that, you're not going to always just take a lateral position. I was a senior NCO in the Air Force. It doesn't mean I'm going to transition to that same type of role on the civilian side, even with the education that I was able to achieve while I was serving in the military. So I was telling the story to somebody else earlier. Financially, you have to be prepared as well. In the military, you get your base pay, and your base pay is taxed. You also get allowances. So you get an allowance for food, and you get a housing allowance, a BAH housing allowance. Those are not taxed. So I'll never forget when I first got my first paycheck from Vineland, my whole paycheck was taxed. And I was like, what happened to the other half of my paycheck? Where'd it go? Uncle Sam took it. The other thing is when you file your income taxes, when I was on in the military, I would get $6,000-7,000 returns, tax returns. Those days are gone. When you leave them, because I was only being taxed on my base pay. I wasn't being taxed on my allowances. So it's eye-opening. And you realize, wow, there's a lot of things to think about as you transition out. But it's always, I think it's always going to be a challenge. But I think you just have to kind of work your way through it.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. It is a hybrid that you're dependent upon. It's very interesting with us because we're 1% of the country's population. And when you're coming home from active duty, from a deployment, from finishing orders, you really are in a very vulnerable position because you are dependent upon the gratuity of family and friends. Even today, after my deployment, I may turn on Amazon Prime or something and see a movie, and I'm like, what's this? And then my children, they're adults now. They're like, well, Mom, this was, and I'll say something like, well, I promise you this was during my deployment because I've never, ever heard of this film. And sometimes I may hear a song on the radio, and I'm like, what? I've never heard it. Yeah. And it comes from not only deployment, but being on active duty, period. Because you're basically working from old dark to old dark, and you do this continuously. So when you come back to the civilian capacity, you don't have someone cooking for you. You have utilities.
Or seafood and surf and turf.
Right. You have bills, and you need that. You need the help of your family to help you just integrate back and not necessarily hold your hand, but just be there for you as a support system. So it can be a very vulnerable place, very vulnerable.
My dad and my mother kind of helped me transition back in. It was really hard for me to lose my military bearing. It took about maybe 2.5 years, I think, for me to really just even out back into civilian life. Because I was always just I was just ready, all the time. It was weird because my mom, she was like, "Why you up so early?" Like, what's wrong with you? Like, why you? It was, even my friends, it was just, I wasn't the same person as I was when I left, and that was kind of hard for them to even, because I just wasn't there no more. I just wasn't there, like with you understand, and but like I said, my mom and my dad, they kind of helped me get myself, back to being a civilian again. So, yeah.
Just to touch on what you had said, Craig, about when you came out, your check was completely different, right? And you're like, take me back. And that's why a lot of people go back, because civilian life ends up being, too overwhelming for them. So now while you guys were in, is there anything that you disliked about yourself while you were in the military? Was there somebody that maybe you became that you kind of had to bring yourself back from and say, that's not me. I went in at 18 and this is who I was, and I'm still being that person. And did it give you a different sense of, I'm an adult and I didn't like that person and now I like this person?
Not so much for me. I think for me it was eye-opening. I think I grew a lot because I got to meet people from all walks of life. And so for me it was a lot of growth. Just learning different people, different cultures, and learning to appreciate those.
I think for me, it was just a very interesting experience where before going into the Army, as I said, I always heard about it because I have a lot of soldiers in my family, but I never imagined that the uniform would become like a second skin. Never in a million years. I thought it was fascinating. I thought it was a wonderful thing to do, but I did not expect to feel as comfortable as I feel in uniform. That completely took me by surprise.
Well, for me personally, being trained in artillery, we were always told, and I don't want to seem morbid, but you're trained to know that you're killing people, from miles away, and you're shooting down range, and you're packing up, and you're moving to the next coordinates to keep firing down range. And as an 18-year-old, being told that you're taking lives for people that you're not seeing face to face, that takes a lot. And like I said, that's what I'm saying. When you're trained, you're being trained to, as a soldier, to do these things. You become numb to it. At first, you're thinking like, "Oh my God," but you're trained to be a soldier. So after months and months of doing this, you're not even thinking about it. You're just doing your job, which is to fire down range, pack up, and move before they lock onto your coordinates and kill you. So that's just what it is. So, you say not liking yourself. At first, no, I didn't like myself because I knew that I was taking lives. But then, like I said, after a while of the training, you don't think about it because you're just doing your job. You're trained to do that one thing. So as a combat, someone say, if your children go into the service and they have a combat job, that's just one thing. They're not going to be the same when they come back. That's just what it is.
Similar to similar to what you say, even in the civilian world, right? Be kind. You never know what somebody's going through. So, Thomas Edison, approximately 40% of our students are military veteran affiliated. We have people watching. If you had any advice for somebody that was transitioning right now out of the military, what advice would that be for them?
Oh my goodness. Advice would be to utilize all of the resources at Thomas Edison to its fullest capacity. And I'm not just saying that because I do, but it's just, they're here. Veterans have a really, really good deal with this institution because you have people who are actually here to act as resources and to provide you with the support that you need. When I did my undergraduate here, I emailed my advisor like every day, all of the time. I did. My instructors, we were always. So I encourage that. Fully engage. Don't hold back. If you have a question, ask. If you need to know something, ask. Because it isn't as if this is an institution that is unfamiliar with veterans. This is an institution that is very familiar with veterans. So it isn't as if you're just throwing a question out there and there's no one to answer. That isn't the case here. So I encourage, please ask. If you have any questions, ask. That is the top thing to do because the resources are here. And I know it can be challenging for us as a military personnel, because we're always told, hurry up and wait, that.
Drink water.
Yeah. Yeah, don't ask, drink water, right. Right. But in this case, if you have a question, don't drink water. Right, ask. So that's my encouragement, is that this is, I'll go as far as to assert that this is a safe space for veterans because the support is here. So that's my advice, definitely.
I would say remain flexible and obviously seek, like you said, seek advice, seek the help of others. Don't be too hard on yourself, and just try to take it one day at a time, and set your goals. And you may sometimes take 2 steps forward and a step back, but keep working at it. And like you said, we do have the support system here to help. So
yes, the same thing. Just there's help here. Just ask, and they're definitely here to support you guys, whatever you need.
So you kind of touched on a little bit on why Thomas Edison, right, why you chose here. What was ultimately your final decision on why you chose Thomas Edison?
My final decision, I had just begun a deployment. We were at Fort Dix, and we went through, at that time was a SRP, Soldier Readiness Point, you remember that. And there's always information about everything, and there was a little, it's like postcard sides, about Thomas Edison. I was like, Thomas Edison, what is this? And at the time, I really didn't pay too much attention to it. I just picked it up and put it in my bag because they give you this, the bags, and you just take one of everything. When I was deployed, I was in Kuwait, actually. I was in, I think we're at Camp Wolf or something, and I still had the bag with me from Fort Dix, New Jersey. Yeah, and I opened it, and I dumped everything out on my cot because we had the metal cots. Yeah, I lived on one for a year. And I looked and I said, oh, wow, I still have this. And we were able to go online. At that time, in 2003, it was like once every 4 weeks or something, we had access to a computer. So I emailed. And when, like a few months later, my email was returned. But that's how. Because I went through an SRP point, a soldier readiness point at Fort Dix, New Jersey, and there was a little postcard, sides, a pamphlet brochure about Thomas Edison.
Well, we are happy that you chose us.
Thank you.
Now, with you both, right, you guys are staff members. So what is it about Thomas Edison that you guys love when it comes to supporting our military and veteran population? What is it that maybe you want to share that we do well?
Well, when I do speak to students that are veterans, I always, point them to you guys. And, they, and I always get feedback from them saying how your office is always available to them and how sweet you guys are, and you guys help them out. Thank you for setting them up. So, you guys are just phenomenal over there. And, to the whole staff, you guys are great.
For me, it's the passion that we have, the team members, the staff members. We have people that have been there, done that. They're military spouses or they're veterans. So they've kind of been through a lot of the things that our students are going through. But I think just the dedication and the passion that we have to serve, I think is huge.
Do you think that any of you guys would be where you are today, whether it's education-wise, career-wise, without having have served in the military?
No.
No, not at all.
No.
Okay. We're all anonymous on that. So I know that we don't have a lot of time. I wanted to open it up to a few of you guys out on the floor and see if you guys had some questions for them that maybe we didn't get to ask them or maybe they didn't get to address. Is there anybody out there that has questions or, wants to dig deep? No?
Yes.
Oh, Dennis? Okay.
What was the most exciting thing you did in the military?
So Dennis he learned something about me today that I don't share with many individuals. So I joined the military. I lived in Fayetteville, North Carolina. And if you don't know where that's at, that's right outside of Fort Bragg. I was a sophomore in high school when 9/11 happened. And so I was able to see parents coming to pick up their children. And ultimately, that was the reason why I joined. I also, because I lived in Fayetteville, that's where the main base is for those who are airborne. So when I joined the military, I joined 10 days after I turned 18. I signed a contract at 17. And I actually had that in my contract to go to airborne school. So I went to airborne school after AIT. And I actually met my husband there. But that is something that Dennis learned about me today, is that I have my airborne wings. and I was punched in my chest by my airborne sergeant. So I wasn't kicked in my chest, but I was punched. It was close enough. So that is something that now you all know about me. Awesome. And we also used to tip over Porta Johns in Iraq. I would never admit to it, even though it's being recorded. My husband still kind of tries to do that when we go out to carnivals and stuff, and he's like, he's always like, I'm coming for him. I'm like, please don't. I don't, like they said, when you're 18, you have no care in the world, right? I'm older now. I have a care for this world. I don't want blue liquid all over me. Is there anything, sorry, I'm also kind of losing my voice. Is there anything that you guys would like to share, maybe that I didn't ask, or something that you want them to know about you, about veterans, in general?
Well, I wasn't 18, I must admit this, but I did think that we didn't tip over the Porta Johns. What we did was wait until someone goes in and then lift it up with a forklift.
It's very similar.
Yeah. You have to be in the desert to truly understand.
Sometimes you have to find fun things to do,
Right.
If you're not out on a convoy or something, like,
Yeah.
you got to make the best of it. I have friends that we have videos of them literally water skiing out there, so,
Yeah, like if you live in the desert, in a war zone, you would think that's funny. Yeah.
But being here,
Right.
it's not really funny.
No, I would never do it, never.
I mean, I learned something when I was in Kuwait waiting to convoy up. I didn't realize it rained out there. And then when it rained and we were walking through and my boots were getting stuck to the mud, I'm like, this is a desert. It's supposed to be sunny 24/7, and that wasn't the case. So, you learn something new every day.
You do.
Right? Does anybody else have any other questions? Kim?
Was it isn't it's kind of recent, I'll say. Army Ignite.
Oh,
You're who?
we'll just blame it on the Army.
Okay, it's it's sort of like a education portal. The issue is there should be more information on Army Ignite. Like, there should be more information about Thomas Edison there on their portal. So I think when talking about veterans finding this institution, I think it's more of Thomas Edison, I was about to say TSU, plugging into the Army system that it uses to provide information to soldiers. So something like New Jersey, it would be something like the 99th Regional Command or Yellow Ribbon. Is everyone familiar with Yellow Ribbon? Or some of you? Yeah, Yellow Ribbon, thank you, ma'am, is a welcoming education, semi-training event for soldiers deploying and returning home. So I would recommend plugging into Yellow Ribbon, and I can definitely assist with that, so that when soldiers do return home, there's someone there to say, well, this is our school, and this is what we offer, and this is what we do. So it's really more of somewhat of a cross between social media, technology, and just the information just being out there. But it really, how can I say, it isn't a fault of Thomas Edison, because the Army and other branches move very fast. Okay, so a yellow ribbon today is not the yellow ribbon of last year. It just isn't. I just did a yellow ribbon a few weeks ago, and we were completely online. So there could be another yellow ribbon coming up next month, and there is, and it won't be online. You see what I mean? So I think it's more of just plugging into these things.
Well, and I'd like to just piggyback off of that. So we've actually done an entire restructure of our department so we can be at these events more and, out there more and more in person. Obviously, the pandemic put a damper on a lot of things. But we have been restructured, and I promise you we'll see us out there. Okay. Anybody else have any questions? Don't make me do like the going once, going twice. No? Okay. Anything else you guys want to share with us?
I just want to say thank you for everybody for being here today. And,
Craig, you can't take my line. That's
I'm
not
sorry.
nice.
Yes, ma'am. No, it's great to see everybody. The ruck walk was fun. Sunshine. The weather's beautiful, so thanks. Sorry.
That was the first thing I woke up to. I was like, please don't let it be raining because it was windy and I didn't know if it was wind or if it was rain. But no, like Craig said, everybody that's virtual, if you can still see us, thank you for logging in. Everybody that's here, I appreciate you guys attending and coming out. We definitely appreciate the support. And that
Yes.
is, go ahead.
I'm very appreciative, very, 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 very appreciative, because it was my experience here that really kicked off the rest of my formal education and really gave me that structure. Just, coming back from a 16-month deployment and having staff and professors that would answer my emails and will say, well, Afia, do this, do that, and we need this. So it was very important to me. After graduating here, I went to a seminary. My first master's is from Lutheran, and then my second, it's from Walden, and my PhD was from Walden. But in terms of learning how to be a professional student, this is where I learned how to do that and make that transition from a military, I was a sergeant at the time, an enlisted person to civilian professional student. So it's very important, and I'm very grateful. Thank you.
We appreciate that. So there are some Thomas Edison mugs on the table with some challenge coins, and those are gifted for each of you and Terrence to take home. We definitely appreciate you guys being out here and sharing your stories with us and your advice. Before I close it down, are you sure there's nobody else that has questions? I think Dennis should ask some more. Well, I appreciate you guys for coming out and supporting us. We hope you guys have a great rest of your week.